Riverside, a small town nestled where the river twisted through old factories and thick woods, was a place where secrets seemed to cling to the shadows. Lila and Jacob Thompson lived in a modest house with peeling yellow paint, its creaky porch a testament to years of hard living. Lila, who spent her days shelving books at the local library, had carried the weight of 6 years of whispers and sideways glances from neighbours who judged her for not having kids. The cold stares from Jacob's family didn't help, their disappointment cutting deeper than words. When Lila found out she was pregnant, the news lit up their home like a long-lost spark, filling it with dreams of a future where laughter would replace the quiet. Jacob, a truck driver with rough hands and a heart full of hope, started picturing a kid running around their tiny yard, chasing fireflies under the stars. One chilly autumn night, Lila woke with a sharp pain that gripped her belly, her breaths coming fast as the contractions hit hard. Jacob jolted awake, his mind racing with panic but moving with purpose. He grabbed a worn duffel bag, tossing in clothes, a blanket, and anything else he could think of, his hands shaking as he helped Lila to their old pickup truck. The engine growled to life, its headlights piercing the darkness as they sped toward Hope Clinic, the only place in town that took folks who couldn't pay much. The clinic had a reputation for cheap care, but rumours swirled about patients vanishing, records going missing, and strange figures slipping out the back doors at night. As they pulled into the empty parking lot, the building loomed ahead, its dark windows staring down like empty eyes, the silence broken only by the crunch of gravel under the tyres. Jacob's gut twisted with unease, a feeling he couldn't shake, but Lila's pained grip on his hand kept him focused. He helped her out of the truck, her steps slow and heavy, and they crossed the threshold into the clinic, unaware of the darkness waiting inside, ready to swallow their hope whole. The Hope Clinic stood as a grim, squat building on the edge of Riverside, its red brick exterior worn and peeling as if it wanted to blend into the shadows and be forgotten. Jacob Thompson helped Lila inside, her steps unsteady from the sharp pains of labour gripping her body, her face pale and drawn with effort. The reception area was dim, lit only by flickering fluorescent bulbs that buzzed like trapped insects, casting long, wavering shadows across the cracked linoleum floor. The air was heavy with the sharp sting of antiseptic, undercut by a faint, unsettling smell, like rusted metal or something left too long in the dark. A tall figure emerged from a side corridor. Dr. William Burns, the clinic's head physician, his movements quick and jerky, like a predator sizing up its prey. His cold, grey eyes locked onto Lila, with a clinical detachment that sent a shiver through Jacob, though he couldn't quite place why. Burns gestured sharply, and a nurse, her face half hidden by the dim light and a surgical mask, wheeled out a creaky, rusted wheelchair. Lila was settled into it, her hands clutching the armrests, and before Jacob could process, Burns waved him off, directing him to wait in the empty reception area, assuring him Lila was in capable hands. The nurse pushed Lila down a long hallway, the wheelchair's wheels squeaking faintly until the sound faded into the oppressive silence. Jacob sank into a hard plastic chair in the waiting area, his calloused hands fidgeting as he tried to calm the knot of worry tightening in his chest. The clinic was unnervingly quiet, the kind of stillness that made every small noise feel like a warning. The lights hummed above, flickering just enough to make him question his eyes, and every so often a faint sound, like a muffled sob or a baby's cry, drifted from somewhere deep in the building, too soft to be sure it was real. He noticed things that didn't sit right. A door at the end of the hall left slightly open, revealing a fleeting glimpse of a figure moving too fast to identify. A strange scratching, like nails dragging across wood, echoing faintly from behind the walls, and a cold draft that seemed to slip through the sealed windows, chilling his skin despite the stuffy air. A med nurse appeared briefly, his eyes hollow and unblinking, his steps almost mechanical before he vanished around a corner, leaving Jacob wondering if he'd imagined the encounter. The minutes dragged into hours, each tick of the clock amplifying his unease, his gut screaming that something was off, but exhaustion dulled his instincts. Finally, the masked nurse returned, her expression unreadable as she told him Lila had given birth to a healthy girl but needed rest, urging him to go home and grab baby supplies. Jacob hesitated, his heart heavy with doubt, but the nurse's insistence and his own wariness won out. He trudged back to his truck, the gravel crunching under his boots, oblivious to the dark truth lurking in the clinic's shadows, a truth that would shatter his world. The maternity ward of the Hope Clinic in Riverside was a cold, sterile place, its walls seeming to swallow any trace of warmth or life. Lila Thompson lay on a thin hospital bed, her body drained from the grueling hours of labour that had finally brought daughter into the world. Her breathing was shallow, her skin clammy from exhaustion, and her mind drifted in a haze of pain and lingering medication. The room was lit by a single, flickering bulb, casting jagged shadows that danced across the peeling paint. Dr. William Burns, the clinic's head physician, moved with a chilling precision, his sharp features set in a mask of indifference as he carried out a plan steeped in darkness. Beside him was his assistant, a wiry med nurse named Edgar, whose hollow eyes and mechanical movements betrayed no hint of conscience. Together they had done this before, their actions smooth and practiced like a grim routine. They had taken Lila's newborn daughter, a fragile girl with a faint wisp of curls, and replaced her with a lifeless infant pulled from the clinic's basement morgue, a cold, calculated swap meant to cover their tracks. The deed was done in the dead of night, the ward eerily empty, its understaffed halls offering no witnesses to their crime. Lila stirred, her body heavy but her instincts pulling her back to consciousness. Her hands reached out, expecting to cradle the warm living weight of her baby, the child she'd dreamed of through years of heartbreak. Instead, her fingers brushed against cold, rigid skin, and her eyes snapped open to see the still, grey form of the substituted infant. A scream ripped from her throat, raw and desperate, echoing through the empty ward like a cry from a nightmare. Her heart pounded, her mind reeling with disbelief and horror. But before she could move, Edgar was there, his face blank as he drew a syringe filled with a heavy sedative. The needle pierced her arm, the sting barely registering against the tidal wave of grief crashing over her. Her vision blurred, her limbs grew heavy, and she sank back into the bed, her mind screaming for her daughter as darkness swallowed her again. Meanwhile, Burns slipped through a narrow, musty hallway hidden behind a locked door, the air thick with the smell of damp rot. He carried the stolen baby to a back exit where a figure cloaked in a dark hood waited, known in Riverside as the broker. This man paid well for infants, funneling them into a shadowy network that served the greed of the powerful. Burns handed over the child, took a thick stack of bills and returned to the ward, his steps as steady as if he'd done nothing more than file paperwork. Lila, lost in a drugged sleep, felt a strange icy presence in the room, like something unseen watching her, but her mind was too clouded by sorrow and sedatives to grasp that had stolen her happiness. Jacob Thompson's world had shattered, the weight of losing his wife Lila and their unborn daughter crushing him like a stone. After being told the devastating news at the Hope Clinic, he brought Lila's body back to Riverside and laid her to rest under the old willow tree by the river, a quiet spot where they used to walk hand in hand, dreaming of a family. The funeral was small, just a handful of neighbours gathered around the grave, their faces etched with sympathy, but their hushed whispers carrying a hint of suspicion, as if they sensed something wasn't right. Jacob's days blurred into a haze of grief, each one heavier than the last, his mind haunted by the guilt of leaving Lila alone that night. Their small house, once a haven of warmth and hope, now felt like a hollow shell. Strange things started happening. Lights flickered on and off without reason, as if the electricity had a mind of its own, and curtains swayed gently, though no breeze stirred the air. At night, Jacob woke to a faint, eerie whisper, Lila's voice calling his name, soft but unmistakable, sending a chill down his spine. One night he caught a glimpse of a shadow gliding across the bedroom wall, its shape eerily like Lila's, but when he flicked on the lamp it vanished, leaving only a cold, lingering unease. The neighbours wouldn't stop talking, their murmurs growing louder about Lila's soul being restless, trapped in some in-between place because of unfinished business. Jacob wasn't one for old wives' tales, but the strange happenings in his house were too real to brush off. Sleepless and desperate, he sought out Miss Ellen, the town's wise woman who lived in a ramshackle house at the edge of the forest, surrounded by overgrown vines and the faint smell of herbs. Her home was cluttered with odd trinkets, bones tied with twine, jars of dried plants, and small carvings that seemed to watch him as he stepped inside. Miss Ellen, her eyes sharp and knowing despite her age, sat Jacob down on a creaky chair and listened as he poured out his pain, his voice thick with sorrow and guilt. She nodded slowly, as if she'd seen this kind of trouble before, and explained that Lila's spirit was bound to the earth, searching for the daughter stolen from her. She warned that the Hope Clinic was a place of darkness, where children vanished and lies were buried deep. Her words hit Jacob like a spark to dry wood, igniting a resolve to uncover the truth. That night, back in his silent house, the air grew cold and he felt Lila's presence again, a faint but undeniable force urging him forward. Her whisper seemed to echo in his bones, guiding him toward the secrets hidden in the clinic's shadows, a path that promised both answers and danger. Jacob Thompson was a man carrying a weight that could crush most folks, his broad shoulders hunched under the grief of losing his wife, Lila, and their newborn daughter. He was a truck driver, used to long, lonely roads, with rough hands calloused from years of hauling cargo, and a quiet strength in his dark eyes that hid a stubborn streak. His short, curly hair was flecked with early grey, a sign of the stress that had aged him beyond his 35 years. Lila had been his anchor, a gentle soul with a laugh that could light up their small riverside home, her long, curly hair always tucked behind her ears as she pored over books at the library. The memory of her smile haunted him now, especially after the strange things that started happening in their house, lights flickering like they were trying to talk, floorboards creaking when no one was there, and Lila's voice, soft and desperate, whispering his name in the dead of night. Those whispers, paired with Miss Ellen's warning about the Hope Clinic's dark secrets, lit a fire in Jacob's chest, pushing him past fear into a restless need to uncover the truth about his stolen child. Riverside was a town that kept its mouth shut, its narrow streets lined with old brick buildings and secrets nobody dared speak aloud. Jacob felt it in the air, like the whole place was holding its breath, waiting for someone to rip the veil off its lies. Miss Ellen, the old wise woman with sharp eyes and a voice like gravel, had told him the clinic was a place where babies vanished, and Lila's ghost seemed to agree, her presence tugging at him like a hook in his soul. He couldn't just sit in his creaky house, surrounded by Lila's untouched books and the empty crib they'd built together, so he made a move. Late at night, when the town was asleep, Jacob slipped out, his worn boots hitting the pavement with purpose. He headed to an old storage building near the clinic, a sagging structure locals whispered was tied to shady deals. Jacob wasn't a thief or a snoop, but grief had a way of rewriting a man's rules. He gripped a crowbar, his knuckles tight, and pried at the rusty lock on the back door. It popped open too easily, like it was daring him to step inside. The air was thick with the musty stench of mildew and old paper, the kind that clogs your throat. His flashlight beam danced across rusted filing cabinets, illuminating faded documents, lists of names, dates, cash payments, and cryptic notes about deliveries to buyers with no names, each page twisting the knife deeper in Jacob's gut, confirming his worst fears. One yellowed file caught his eye, mentioning an old barn just outside town, a forgotten place swallowed by weeds and shadows. Jacob's heart raced, his breath shallow as he tucked the paper into his jacket and headed out, the weight of his mission pressing harder. His old pickup truck rattled along a dirt road, the engine's grumble the only sound in the stillness. The barn loomed ahead, its wooden walls warped and sagging, like it was tired of holding itself up. Inside it reeked of rot and damp straw, the air heavy with decay. Beams groaned overhead, and Jacob moved carefully, his flashlight picking out strange symbols carved into the crates, swirls and jagged lines that looked like they belonged in a nightmare. His pulse thumped in his ears as he crept deeper, every shadow making him jump. Then he saw him, Edgar, the wiry med nurse from that awful night, his gaunt face and hollow eyes unmistakable as he rifled through a box of papers. Edgar froze when he spotted Jacob, his eyes widening like a trapped animal's, and he bolted for the door. Jacob's instincts kicked in, his strong frame lunging forward, tackling Edgar to the dirt floor with a thud. The nurse squirmed, his bony hands clawing at the ground, muttering about Dr. Burns and some secret group pulling strings. But he shut up quick, slipping free with a weasel's speed and vanishing into the woods. Jacob's blood boiled, his fists clenched, but before he could chase, a spark flared in the corner and flames erupted, licking up the barn's walls like they were starved. He scrambled out, coughing as smoke stung his lungs, the fire roaring behind him, swallowing the crates and papers in a hungry blaze. Stumbling into the open, Jacob gasped for air, his chest heaving, his dark skin slick with sweat. The barn was a glowing inferno now, its secrets burning to ash. But then, in the flickering light, Lila's spirit appeared, a faint, shimmering figure with her familiar long, curly hair, her presence both comforting and fierce. She pointed toward a hill in the distance, where an old mansion stood, a place the townsfolk whispered was cursed, where dark rituals went down. Jacob's legs felt like lead, his lungs burned from the smoke, but the sight of Lila's ghost and the thought of his daughter out there somewhere kept him going. His resolve hardened, his broad frame straightening as he wiped the soot from his face, ready to face whatever horrors waited in that eerie house, driven by a father's love and a ghost's unrelenting call. Jacob Thompson's heart pounded like a freight train as he approached the old mansion on the hill, a crumbling relic that looked like it had been spit out of a ghost story. The place was swallowed by overgrown vines and shadows, its broken windows staring down like hollow eyes. But Jacob didn't flinch. He was here for his daughter, the one stolen from Lila, guided by the faint, eerie glow of her spirit. The air inside was thick with the stench of mould and decay, the kind that clings to your skin, and the creaky floorboards groaned under his boots as he moved through the dark, his flashlight barely piercing the gloom. He navigated twisting hallways past shattered mirrors and rotting furniture until he found a hidden room deep in the mansion's gut, lit by a ring of flickering candles that cast a sickly glow. There, on a rough wooden table scratched with strange, unsettling symbols, lay his baby girl, her tiny curls catching the light alongside another infant, both part of a sick setup. Dr. William Burns, the cold-hearted doc who'd orchestrated this nightmare, stood with a shadowy figure known as the Broker, both of them preparing a twisted ritual to sell the kids into some dark, underground network for profit. Jacob's blood ran cold, his fists clenching, but before he could act, Lila's ghost appeared, a faint silhouette woven from shadows, her presence radiating a fury that seemed to shake the air. Burns and the Broker froze, their faces drained of colour, stumbling back as if slapped by an invisible force. The room started to tremble, the walls cracking and the floorboards splitting with a sound like breaking bones. Flames sparked out of nowhere, leaping from the candles to the tattered curtains, spreading fast like they were hungry. Jacob didn't hesitate. He lunged for the table, scooping up his daughter and the other baby, their cries piercing the chaos as he held them tight against his chest. Burns tried to bolt, scrambling for the door, but a rickety staircase gave way under him, and he fell with a sickening crack, his body crumpling lifelessly below. The Broker slipped away like a snake, vanishing into a side passage as the fire roared louder, consuming the room. Jacob ran, dodging falling beams and choking on smoke, his lungs burning as he burst out of the collapsing mansion just as it caved in, reduced to a smouldering pile of ash and rubble. Back in Riverside, he handed the babies to the police, who'd been tipped off by an anonymous call, maybe Miss Ellen's doing. The town erupted with whispers, the mansion's dark secrets spilling out like poison. Jacob named his daughter Lily, after Lila, and raised her in their little house, where the air felt lighter now. Lila's ghost never showed again, but on quiet nights, folks swore they saw a woman's shadow by the willow tree, watching over her girl, a silent promise that truth always finds its way.